All right, guys. Well, it's 10:33, and we do want to protect your time as you all are getting back in the swing of school starting. So, thank you so much for being here at this last session with us. We have really enjoyed our Tuesday and some Monday mornings that we've met, but we have really enjoyed our sessions with you guys this year, and we hope that you have as well, and that you have gained a lot of new ideas from the EduProtocols Field Guidebook 1. So we are actually going to pick up where we left off last time with the spinner of the protocols, because we didn't get through all of them. And I tried to remember, Matt and I were kind of putting our heads together the other day going, okay, which ones did we actually cover? So if I left one off or didn't remember correctly, please forgive me. But we have prepared a new spinner with the ones that we did not get to last time. So if we spin to one that you had an idea about, or it spoke to you when you read it in the book, if you don't mind just sharing out about that particular protocol. So let me share my screen. All right. Can everybody see our wheel? Very good. Okay, here we go. Gonna spin. I use Flippity again. Ooh, digital class book. And anybody want to share about this one?
I like that idea. My students and I have self-published up until last year. We would basically do that activity. Each kid would take a different chapter, and we would collectively work. Now, with that particular activity, it was basically saying, you could make it not this big, grand, publishable project, but you could kind of do some of the same principles in it. And I thought that was a great idea. Sort of, I guess, similar to the way you break a slideshow with different people taking different slides. You could definitely develop a document where everyone's kind of contributing to a class book. And so I definitely could see ELA applications for that.
Absolutely. I kind of see this as a culture building activity as well, just sort of naturally, because they're all producing this one product together. And I think there's that group ownership in that. Hey, Chris, thanks for joining us. We are spinning the EduProtocol wheel and talking about the learning frame that it lands on. So, but yes, I love that, Jason. And that one is adaptable, as they all are, but this one's easily adaptable to any subject area. Anybody else want to share about that one? Digital class book. Okay. I'll spin again. Cyber sandwich. Anybody had an idea for implementing this one? It's on page 127 in your book. I'm trying to get to the pages.
Yeah, I like this one a lot, especially for younger students. So the premise behind it is that students partner up. They each have a passage to read, and is primarily used for comparing and contrasting. So two different passages to read. They have a slide deck that they are jotting down their thoughts and ideas about the main points of the passage that they read. Then they come together, talk about similarities, or they give a synopsis of what their passage said. They each take notes on their slide about what the other person wrote, and then they on a final slide they talk about similarities between the two. So cyber sandwich, it's piecing two things together to look for similarities. So I like this one a lot. A lot of application in the ELA classroom for this one.
Yeah, we could definitely use this in second grade. Be really good to use. I think the kids would enjoy that. Let them present it, maybe to like their table group or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, great ideas, guys.
I like the fact that also they're working together, because when I think about especially the elementary classroom, like a lot of times Venn diagrams ended up being has eyes, doesn't have eyes. Like there wasn't a whole lot of depth to what they were comparing and contrasting. So the fact that it allows them each to have a piece and then come together to collaborate and then work together to really come up with those great pieces to it, I think it's helpful too.
That's a great point, Tracy, because you're right. I mean, oftentimes we just do the opposite, on each side. And that is a hard skill for the younger students. I mean, and maybe even for the high school students. But yeah, allowing them that collaboration. All right, let's spin the wheel. Ooh, tech coach. This one is super fun. Does anybody have any ideas on this one or how you might implement it? Sorry, let me find the page for you guys. I see y'all looking. It's they're such short chapters that you miss some of them. So basically the point of this one is it's 2 students and you allow one of them to be the coach and one of them to be the student, and then they switch places. Has anybody found the page yet? You can shout it out.
139.
Thank you, Christine. 139. Okay. And so basically it's whatever skill you start small. You can use this with some of your tech skills, like teaching the kids how to do particular things and Google Slides or on a site. And so the one kid is the coach and the other kid does what the coach directs them to do. And they both have to play their roles. And so it's really good because it teaches kids how to facilitate and then how to to take direction. So this can be with anything. And so it deals with pairs. So it's does anybody have any application thoughts on application for this with your academics? I think of this being used in mathematics a lot. If you had like Equatio or something where they could build their equations within a doc or some type of platform, digital platform, I could see this being used because one student would have to tell them the directions and the steps on the math problem, and that student would do it. And so I could see it really tying into mathematics well.
I was thinking about the book study that we just hopped off of for the Chromebook Infused. We were talking about different tools that we could use and our students could use, and really working towards this year moving our students to that digital fluency. And so maybe something along the lines of a particular tool that's being used. So say a student hasn't ever used Jamboard, we'll just use that as an example, but another student has, then maybe they could be more the tech coach for that student and helping to move them past just the beginning part of it, but how is it really used and what can it be used for? So maybe something along those lines, not necessarily specific to content, but just more to build that capacity and work on helping the kids reach that digital fluency part.
Yes, for sure. And it does speak to a lot of that, Tracy, like having some type of tech skill and the kids coaching one another. So yeah, that's great. That one's fun. Anytime they get to feel like they're the teacher or the coach, or, they love that. I don't care how old they are, they love it. So, all right, let's spin the wheel again. The Fast and Curious. You guys actually got to experience this in the beginning with the quizzes. We gave you, well, we didn't do all the steps, of course, because we didn't have a whole week, but you guys got to do the quizzes where you would have practiced all week and then you would have done your little quiz on it. Well, you do a quiz all along and they focus on the areas that they don't get correct. But how do you see, I know Rachel actually, I'm putting you on the spot, Rachel, but Rachel actually already shared with me how she's going to be implementing the Fast and the Curious into her high school history classroom. So Rachel, if you're able, do you want to share a little bit about that? She may be.
Yes, I'm getting there. Sorry, I'm just trying to find a charger for my phone because I'm on 20%. Yeah, so I'm going to take this and run with it. So previous to this book study, I've always had my students take a day of classroom time to copy down key terms, and they would turn those in. So instead of doing just handwritten definitions, I'm taking the Fast and Curious, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to do that protocol every week for my on-level kids and for my AP kids. And for AP kids, I'm going to use it for just straight content knowledge, so that I'm not having to use as much time using like lecture, and we can focus on those historical skills that they need for the AP exam. So I've already gotten my first 3 chapters done for quizzes. And then I thought I would use, instead of just using quizzes, I think I'll use like Quizlet and Kahoots every now and then to kind of change it up a bit. And so the basic premise of the protocol is you allow students to tell you what you already know. So if they know, I'm going to use really easy ones. If they know who George Washington is, I don't have to teach them, who George Washington is and in his context. I can focus on the decisions that he made. I can focus on more of the meat of what we need to know about the historical context instead of the who, the what, the when, the where, the why. So I'm really excited about the Fast and the Curious, so I can get rid of that vocab day and we can focus on just that, that basic, because key terms is just such a, surface level identification, memorization type stuff. So then they get to see it every day instead of when we were just copying key terms, they were, writing it down, perhaps copying it from one person. That's what I saw a lot last year too, is one person did it and everyone else just copied it. So like, I'm really excited for Fast and Curious. It's on the plans for every week to really focus on that, just identification, content knowledge.
Awesome, Rachel. Thank you so much for sharing. Kind of put you on the spot, but I knew you had spoken in depth with me about your plans for that. So thank you for sharing. Any other ideas with Fast and Curious? All right. We'll spin once more. All right, Freyer. And you know
I'm
what?
going to use it with vocabulary. I'm going to start with the kids learning more about each other, and then I'm going to use that model for vocabulary in the ELA workshop. So that's how I'm going to start that off this year.
That's great. Give such that organization that students need when they're learning those new words and key terms and things like that. Anything else with Freyer that anyone wants to share?
So I did have the idea of using the Freyer model, Freyer, that one, with obviously, learning about their classmates, but also, especially when we get into the periodic table and the different types of elements with your metals, non-metals, and the different groups and the characteristics. I can have, obviously the title of it, whatever the group it is, or type of element that we're talking about, and then different questions about it to kind of get them to basically take the notes that I provide for them and sort of break it down into a little bit different fashion that's not just straight reading the notes. They're answering questions and putting it all in one spot that can help organize it. And then if I'm able to do that because with the way my classroom is set up, they're already in tables. So we work in small groups year round. And so if I give one person at each table a different one, I can give them 10 minutes or whatever to kind of work on it. And then another 10 minutes to okay, now I'll share with your table mates what you had and the information about it.
That's awesome. I love to hear those ideas of the older grades, because I know we use lots of graphic organizers in elementary, but why don't we use those more in secondary? Because I think the graphic organizers are still great even when the kids are older. So I love to, because I've seen it used a lot in the elementary world, but not as much in the secondary world. So it's a great idea. Does anybody want to share about one, like you're just dying to share, like an idea on one that we didn't get to on the wheel? Because now's your time. We'd love to hear. All righty. Well, I think we will move on from that. Thank you all so much for sharing. There's just so many ideas, and that's what's so great about the EduProtocols. There's really no limit or bound. I mean, you make it what you want it to be in your classroom, and can adapt it to so many different things. So I'm excited to see these in action this year in your classrooms.
All right. And so as we kind of look at, the final component of this, implementing all of these out in your classroom, figuring out which ones work well with your content area and with your students, we have to think about how we will assess students. And so we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about the mastery and assessment in chapter 33. While it is kind of comical, the analogy that is given, the comparison that's given that John and Marlena make at the very beginning of that, comparing beer making to mastery, it kind of hits home. What better way to make a reference to making beer than with a bunch of education professionals, So, but what really stands out though is the percentages there. So 68% of people who make beer are mediocre, 16% fail, and then 16 are successful. And he refers to it as a bell curve, obviously. Okay. So with our students, if those same, obviously the numbers aren't going to be like exactly the same, but the idea is the same, right? So if we only have a very small portion of our learners truly mastering the content that they're learning, 68% are right there in the middle. They're, average, they kind of have it. They're not all the way to the point of mastery. And then 16% that are completely failing. What are we doing to ensure that we can begin nudging those up to a larger percentage, right? So this idea of mastery-based learning. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how we can further, because I'm kind of jumping around here and my thoughts are in my mind. Because we are so time bound, we are so restricted by the amount of time that we can spend on certain things. We are in some cases limited to how much we are truly able to establish and implement mastery-based learning, right? So I'm just curious, what have you done in your classroom in your thinking and your pedagogy to implement mastery-based learning and assessing? How do you manage that thought process and that mindset given the time restrictions that we have, given all of the standards that we have to cover?
I know with English, we have a curriculum map that was just released, and actually took time to read all 3 grade levels, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade over the weekend, and made my own little special notes that no one will ever see. And it was kind of funny because, like, one of the funny things, like they were supposed to prioritize the standards. So, like, shockingly, standard 1 was always a priority, and the speaking and listening standards were never a priority. They were considered non-essential. And so, part of me was kind of like, do we really need a big committee to have to meet a whole bunch to do something that seems like intuitive and obvious? But it's kind of one of those things, like, the practical reality is standard 1, like, main idea, like, that is always going to be assessed on a standardized test. And speaking and listening really is not. And so then you kind of get into the battle of, well, are you trying to prepare learners, because speaking and listening is very critical. Like, that's what we're doing. Like, thankfully, Matt did not say, open a Google document and write an essay for the next 5 15 minutes and we're going to evaluate the, you know, like a lot of what we do as adults are speaking and listening based. And so, you know, that balance of what you're teaching, how you're teaching. And I think, you know, for me, I guess a lot of it has to go with student motivation. So like I teach a lot of my students 6th, 7th, and 8th grade year. And I can always remember being frustrated in my English class with essays because I just always thought it doesn't really matter what I do. I'm always going to make a B on my essay. Like I can't write an A essay. Girls are the only ones who can write A essays because they can draw little hearts on their eyes. They have great handwriting. This was, of course, like, you know, a billion years ago when handwriting was important. And so I just felt like there was no way I could, you know, move forward. And so I have always tried to intentionally tell my 8th grade, okay, if you've always made a B on your assessments with me, here's what you could do to get better. Here's what you could, and try to give them specific feedback of, you know, because writing is so critical and important in an ELA environment, here's what you could specifically do to get better at this thing. And so like to me, you know, whether or not the kid receives that message or not, they at least know this is how I could master this thing. This is how I could get better at this thing. And this is a specific step I could take to get better. And so I think that that's part of the conversation you have to have with the kids. Because otherwise, you know, if they don't feel like it really doesn't matter what I do, I'm always going to make this particular grade, then, you know, it is kind of that bell curve of like, they don't care.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. Oh, Patrice is dropping in. She's heading to an x-ray right now. I'm so glad you joined us, Patrice. Thank you for being here. Yeah, if students don't realize, if they don't get the feedback that they need to understand where they are in their learning and how to progress and get better, then, you know, that motivation, the intrinsic motivation to do better is not, I mean, it's not gonna happen. It's not gonna be there. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Jason. Who else? What else? What are your other thoughts on how you intentionally work towards mastery-based learning in your classroom? Given the so, Patrice, my question was, how do you work towards implementing mastery-based learning and assessing when we are so restricted on time and the number of standards that we have to cover, and moving through the content that we have to teach? What other thoughts are there? It's a tough question, I know. All right, then maybe let me kind of tie this to some of the learning that we did in the infused book study. I know many of you were with us either last year or are currently with us with that. So in part of Holly Clark's book, she references assessing learning in 3 different ways: assessing for learning, of learning, and as learning. Okay, so assessing for learning is using assessments as formative assessing, right, to guide our instruction. Assessing of learning is more of the summative, the culminating. Let's see how much students have obtained. And then what I think is missing the most, and it's not to say that it is across the board, but I think the thing that overall within education that we can improve upon is the assessment as learning. So having students reflect on their own learning, giving students the opportunity to either meet one-on-one, kind of like what you were talking about, Jason, meet one-on-one or in small groups with the teacher to talk about where they stand in their learning. What misconceptions do they have? Where can they continue to improve? And I like what John and Marlena talk about in this chapter. It's not the speed at which work is completed, it's the quality. So when a kid turns in an assignment, the teacher doesn't, just grade it for correctness. They grade it for quality and send them back. That's some of the things that I spoke to in, my self-paced session at Merge was, it's about quality over quantity, right? So giving students time, giving students opportunities to go back and revise and edit. So the example that they gave in here was about a writing prompt. So instead of giving student a writing prompt every single day to respond to and just have garbage as a response, giving them the opportunity to write a couple of sentences, share that with a teacher, come back the next day, add some more to it, so that by the end of the week, instead of writing 5 different topics completely unrelated to each other just to improve upon those writing skills, they have built a cohesive, well-written document response with teacher feedback that has helped them in their learning process and given them the confidence that they need to improve as a writer. I found that tie to be a really good way of pulling those two together, connecting the two, assessing as learning. The metacognition aspect of this is so critical and so important. So now let's think about the protocols that we have and that we've talked about and gone through. Do you see one or more of these protocols that we've learned about as being a really good one for assessing in your classroom with your students and what you teach? If so, what is it and how do you see it?
I think just again, even though I said it a minute ago with that Freyer model, just with the way that my class is set up in tables, they're pretty much already in small groups, giving them that Freyer model for beyond stuff about just periodic table related items where they can, even if they have to do it in pairs, dissect the topic, answer some questions, and turn around and share that information. Because just me telling them, and I say this a lot in class too, I'm like, ask your classmates, a couple of them, before you come and ask me. If I've already said it once and you still don't get it, ask a couple of them, then come back and ask me, because I can stand up in front of the class and say, the sky is blue. What do you mean the sky is blue? And their classmate next to them can say, the sky is blue. Oh, gotcha. And sometimes it's just a way that they can explain it in a way that makes sense to them, that I've tried the 9,000 different ways to explain it that I know of. They may say it in the same words, but it just may click. Because and biggest thing I have in my class is just try. I in past have gotten funny looks when I say I don't grade homework, which I don't call it homework. I call it classwork away from class. I don't grade it for correctness. I just, did you do it? Did you not? Did you try? Did you not? And don't go and put, kitty cats and unicorns as all of your answers. But did you try or did you not? And then we'll go over it. Well, what do we do if we miss it? You fix it. It's your responsibility to fix it. And they said, well, why? Well, so I'm not so much caring about the fact if you got it right or wrong, but the fact that you're learning it and fixing it and moving forward with that. So I think just for me, using that Freyer model more will help take a little bit of the burden off of me and put it more on them as far as their learning and being able to kind of share that with their classmates.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of utilizing that. You're right. We can say something, 5, 10 different ways and think we have said it as clear as day, be as blatant and as blunt as possible, but it's still not click until somebody else, one of their classmates, says it. And so giving them opportunities to use like the Freyer to share with each other and clarify and correct those answers, I think is a great way. Yeah, great way of using that. What else?
Matt, I just kind of in here in general thinking about the whole idea of this book, how we're trying to balance that brain power or give them more brain power to focus on the content. I loved the idea of let's take away the distraction of the format of the test or how we're assessing them, and let's just see what content have they really mastered. And so I just love their idea of mastery and assessment using the learning frame that you're already using in class, because so many times I do think that it's the format or the way that the question is being asked, or because I know that there's a point in class where we do need to prepare them for these standardized tests, but like that is not truly what we're teaching these students for. And so it's okay to give them that same protocol that they're used to in class to then use as an assessment. And so I just love the whole idea behind that, which is the same reason we use the protocols all year long anyway, so that we can let them focus on that content. So I love that, because I do wonder sometimes when we're looking at assessment data, how much of that, assessment data was a distraction of the format, of the test or how the question was asked. And it's sad to me almost to think we might give a kid a C, but really they have mastered that learning. Maybe it was just the way it was asked or something like that. Did anyone like resonate with that? Or does that resonate with you from the book?
I learned a lot personally. I think, we've talked earlier about reflecting for our students, but just the national board process, which I went through recertification this past year, like it's important as teachers to reflect. Like, I know people say it, but like, I tend to think when you go through the national board process, you really kind of understand a little bit more maybe what all that means. And so like reflecting on your practice and what you do. And so like I had the opportunity a couple of years ago to kind of start with a curriculum giving like 2 major assessments every 9 weeks. There was basically a midterm and a final. And the thing that I had, like it would vary, like the kids would write an essay or they would come up with a slideshow, or they would argue a position, or they would be in a group chat. They would lead a group panel discussion, or the kids would have a speech that they would give annotating a particular passage. And so it was usually kind of a different activity all throughout the year. But it was always deep, meaningful, and it always had a rubric that was in detail. And so like our readings tied to the building up of that thing for the midterm and then for the final. And so I loved, that rather than just, you're right, Ashley, like here's another random out of context test, that, they were building to a performance piece, and that performance piece was a part of the things that they had been doing daily for about the past 3 weeks. And so, I felt like the class took a step forward over the past few years in my classroom just because we had that built in, and I felt like the assessments were more meaningful to the kids.
For sure. All right. Any other thoughts? So then the next chapter is about, the title is Inch by Inch, right? And actually, maybe not.
Putting it all together and then inch by inch.
Is that, yes, putting it all together. Maybe that's what I've skipped over that. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah, there it is. Okay. All right. So in the putting it all together section, they give the analogy of the train. So think about all of the protocols and all that they have in common. What do you think about, what commonalities do you see in all of the protocols and how it relates to this analogy of the train?
Matt, you have to share your idea. As we were talking about this and collaborating, Matt just said something, and I was like, wow, that was really profound. Like, and it doesn't necessarily say that in the book, but it was just such a great connection.
Yeah, before I even started reading this section, when I saw the picture of the train engine, my thinking of this is that a train, as a train gets started, it doesn't start off going full speed. It takes a good long while, and we know very well because in our building there's the train tracks right outside, and we see those trains start and stop every day. And they move very, very slowly, and it takes them several minutes to get up and running up to a good, decent speed. And so once a loaded train is running at full speed, it takes a long time to stop too. There's a lot of momentum, there is a lot of weight behind it, and it takes a long time to slow down, right? So, I thought when I first saw that picture, the protocols are the same way. This is not something that you're going to be able to jump out of the gate and be able to implement every single one of these, or all of the ones that you've thought about in your mind that are going to fit in with your curriculum. This is going to take time to build up that momentum, to start off with those smart starts, to start off, just implementing the idea of the procedures and the expectations that go along with them. But once you have built that momentum, once you have built up your speed, those protocols are going to have so much power behind them, and they're going to carry your students, and the learning is going to be so much more meaningful, and it's going to be hard to stop, So that's my takeaway from that. And it's a little different from how it's explained in the book with each of the different pieces of the train, but so.
Running off of what Matt said, just taking a few of the new little protocols and kind of getting the rhythm with those, and then as the year goes on, adding one, then adding another, then adding another, and eventually it's just almost second nature. It's like, here we go, and it makes life a little bit easier.
Yeah. And the beauty of these is that even though you implement these over and over again, they tend not to get monotonous and boring because of the design, because they're so versatile in how they can be implemented and tweaked and smashed together with another protocol. I think it's interesting in the book too that they reference the crossing bars, prevent cars from crossing the track before a train comes. Those are referred to as the distractions of the classroom, and those being necessary to prevent the distractions that take students away from those protocols. So I was just interesting that they thought of that and included that in there. All right. So a good reference there, a good comparison and analogy. I'll kind of hand it off over to Tracy now as we think about moving forward into this school year, how we're going to take this and move forward with our learning.
Absolutely. So we want you, as we move into the beginning of the year, to think about what is a goal that you can set for yourself just for the first 9 weeks. Not thinking throughout the whole year, but just what's a goal for you in working with and using the protocols in your classroom. And so we're going to go back to our group brainstorm document. Oh, thank you, Ashley. I was getting ready to drop that link in there. Ashley's dropped the link into the group brainstorm document just so you'll have a quick reference to it. And over the course of the past few weeks, we've had you add different pieces to this, from a smart start that you can use at the beginning of the year to what is your redesigned lesson idea? What is it that you want to use a protocol for? What is your lesson? And then what two protocol learning frames did you want to use? As well as the low cognitive load to start off with, so that we're not just jumping into the content, but we're really building that capacity and just using it in a fun, low cognitive way, and then moving it to content. And then this last column was what we had you over the past couple of weeks add to, is the mastery and assessment. So you'll notice over on the left-hand side, there's a gold colored sticky note that says first 9 weeks goal. So just kind of thinking about what you put on your slide, and maybe it's a venture off of this slide as well. It doesn't necessarily have to be specific to this, but what is a goal that you can make for yourself for the first 9 weeks? So we'd love for you to take a few minutes right now and just add to that gold colored sticky note. Add on there as well if there's any way specifically that you can see our team helping you to achieve your goal. We would love to really hold each other accountable and have that collaboration with you. No one else necessarily is going to go look at your goal or, email you, but we would love to be that person to really help walk with you through this. So if there's something in particular, just add that to that sticky note as well. So we'll take just a couple of minutes for you to think about that and do that. I love some of the things that I'm reading that y'all have down for your goals. I'm trying to click through each of them. Is there someone that would like to, once again, this is your goal, so you do not have to share in any way, shape, or form, but is there anyone that would like to share what they're really hoping to do this first 9 weeks for their goal?
Keeping it simple, my goal was just to add 2 EduProtocols that into my lessons that kind of become regular routine. So it's a number that I can shoot for, just 2 of them, start small and kind of master those, be able to kind of alter those to fit different lessons, but to where they kind of become sort of regular routine.
Love it. I think that's great to have a measurable goal that you said just 2, not like I'm just going to implement some EduProtocols or I want to do 15 of them, but 2 is definitely doable, especially in the middle or in the first 9 weeks with everything else that goes on. Sometimes the first 9 weeks gets away from us because there's so much at the beginning there that all of a sudden we're like, oh my gosh, it's October the 1st. Like, that's crazy. So that's a great one, Brad. Anyone else feels like sharing?
Well, I think I want to start with a frayer, but I'm going to have to do it on paper at first. And I did read in the book that, it didn't have to be on the computer to start with, just because our second graders, I may get some kids that are new to the school that don't really, know how to use a Chromebook and all of that. It usually takes us a couple days to kind of get through, playing with them and getting used to them again. But I'm going to do it on paper first, and then slowly move towards the computer. And then the following week, when we're starting our ELA workshop, just dive in with vocabulary and go from there. And then maybe in October, add another protocol in the reading workshops. I think that's where I'm going to start with that.
Love it. I think that's great. Yeah. And it's totally fine to do things on paper. We're the ed tech team and we still do things on paper. I still have my sticky notes laid all around. And to have our kids do things on paper too, everything doesn't always have to be digital. So I think that's a good start for your second graders. Definitely. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for sharing those goals. We'll kind of look back over them and make sure we follow back up with you guys as we start the first 5 weeks and as you kind of get into it, just to see how you did with your goal and were you successful and are you being successful with it. I did want to share with you, if you will look on slide 4 on the group brainstorm document, Leanne Cox emailed me today and just said she wasn't going to be able to make it and she thoroughly was going to miss everyone and has enjoyed our sessions together. But she did want me to share with you those links on underneath her Smart Start. These are some things that she's gathered or she's collected, and she just dropped them in there as a resource for her, but she wanted you all to know that they were there and any way, shape, or form that you can use them, you're welcome to look at them and grab them and those types of things. So I told her I would share that with you guys. So, all right. Well, we really have enjoyed our time together this summer. It's hard to believe that the summer is over with and we're looking at school starting next week. When we started this book study, we thought, 2 months with them, that's going to be fantastic. And it has been wonderful, but we also thought it would last forever and things don't last forever. So we hope that it's been a good learning experience for you, that you're walking away with some new things to try in your classroom, as well as some growth for yourself, as well as maybe even some new connections throughout the county, whether it's with us or with the other people that you saw in the meet. I'm going to drop in the coaching form link for you, that if you or anyone on your team or your school are interested, we are always happy to come alongside of you and do some coaching with you. So see if that link does it. But feel free to fill that out, reach out to us in any way, shape, or form. We look forward to seeing you guys next week at Ignite on Tuesday. So hopefully we'll see some of you all there. So yeah, Matt and Ashley, anything you want to say as we close out?
Just echo you, Tracy. It's been great. Thank you for inspiring us. I'm always inspired by educators who spend their time in the summer choosing to learn and grow. That's really incredible. And I'm just thankful to know each of you and look forward to seeing you out in the field.
Yeah, this has been a great book study, and so grateful that we've been able to learn alongside you with this. Lots of really good stuff in this book study. And there are lots more books that mimic this one. The protocols people, there are like 3 or 4 more books now. There's another field guide that is similar to this one with 16 more. And then there's a math reps book, and then one that just came out for history, social studies. So lots of really good learning frames, even more than there are just tons. There are tons. So I encourage you to challenge yourself to explore some of those too. So thank y'all so much for everything that you do. We wish you all the best in this new year with your students. And we look forward to seeing you and being with you and working alongside you. So thank y'all so much. We will see you and talk to you soon.